a couple other documents there for people to look at while we're getting going.
Kat, you would have found it funny. I was on a meeting earlier today, and I was in the same spot. And my camera was tilted to where it was low enough to where my son, and he's 19 months old, would literally walk in and just peek his head right here and would stand for like awkward amounts of time. So for like 45 seconds, he would just stand there and not do anything, just stare and then leave. So it was funny. I got a kick out of that.
I'm sure it provided lots of entertainment.
Well, yeah, it was very interesting. But
yeah, I'm gonna put a link to a helpful document for tonight's class. And then,
all right. And did you say, do you have your slide? You should be able to share it easily.
To share, let me do that right now.
There we go. Sweet. Awesome. Let's see. It's wild that this is the last one. This has been fun. It's been a lot of fun. I've enjoyed it.
It's been fun for me to go through and brush up on everything. So the document that I just put in a link to is this one. It's called Approximate Planting Dates for Central Oklahoma. And if you want to pull it up and look at it or print it out, it'll be useful. Actually, go ahead.
I was just going to say, whatever time you want to get rolling, it's up to you.
Let's go ahead.
The past couple we've had people continually kind of hopping on during. So yeah, if whatever works for you.
Yeah, I'd like to go ahead. People can continue to kind of filter in.
Yeah.
I do want to say if people are willing to show their faces, it's nice for me so I can see who I'm talking to. I can totally understand if you don't want to, for whatever reason, but it's nice to see actual live humans.
1 second.
And then also,
Kat, 1 second. All right, you back with us?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll feel free to wave your hand if you have a question during the middle of the presentation, and or put your question in the chat. Anthony will kind of keep an eye on that so that we can take questions along the way. As long as we don't get too bogged down by that, I think it's helpful for everybody to get a little bit more of an interactive experience here rather than just listening sort of passively.
Can you actually reshare your screen? There was a, and I hope, no offense to anyone, there was a lot of chatter, so I did the auto or the mute all. So if you do have a question or something, unmute, please add to it. That's typically what I do. We would like to encourage a lot of engagement, so please don't hesitate to. So yeah, Kat, whenever you're ready, we can get rolling.
Okay, well, I'll just introduce myself. My name is Kat Gant, and I work with Oklahoma City Beautiful as the director of our school garden support program, which is called OKC Harvest. OKC Harvest has been in existence for about, let's see now, I've been with the program about almost 3 years. And prior to that, it was started by a couple of volunteers who were interested in seeing gardens in schools so children could have garden-based hands-on learning. Oklahoma City Beautiful has picked up the program from those volunteers that started it, and we are in the process of rolling out year 2 of a pilot program to showcase what we can achieve with garden educators, paid garden educators in school garden programs. I think my garden educators, Sarah and Micah, are going to be joining us tonight. I'll see if they're on here. There's Sarah. Wave, Sarah. So OKC Beautiful is a beautification and environmental education nonprofit that's been around for 50 years. And the school garden program, through that program, we're actually helping to really meet some serious needs that our youth have, but also raise the next generation of environmental stewards by giving kids an experience of nature early on. So if you're interested in volunteering with their school garden program, holler at me. We're looking for volunteers. This year is a little unique, obviously, because we won't be in person in school. We'll be doing a lot of video lessons and so forth to keep going. But if you're interested in learning more about it or wanting to get involved, please let me know. And I'm gonna let Anthony introduce himself. This garden series is a partnership between OKC Beautiful and the Lynn Institute.
Yeah, like Kat said, my name is Anthony Kobe. I'm the Director of Collaboratives and Community Engagement for the Lynn Institute. And the Lynn Institute is a nonprofit right here in Oklahoma City. And really what we do is all of our work is focused on working with vulnerable populations. And a majority of our work is currently focused on Northeast Oklahoma City, which we found in 2014 through a research study that we conducted, suffers from a lot of issues associated with lack of access to resources. And so what we do is we work with this thing called the Healthy Community Collaborative, which is a collaboration of different organizations and community leaders that was founded in 2016 and put forward different initiatives and programs to really do what we can to spur the growth and development of Northeast Oklahoma City. And it's a lot of really good work. And I'd love to get you more information, or if you'd like to get plugged in and see what it is we've got going on, you could check out our website, which is linninstitute.org, or shoot me an email. You'll get a follow-up email from me following this, but probably tomorrow if I can, if I do things correctly, you'll get it tomorrow. And if you have a question or if you'd like to chat about what we do, please let me know. For those of you who are, feeling up to it, or if you're interested, we do have a series of food distribution events that have been going on, where we've actually been giving out with each event roughly 30,000 pounds of food to members of the Northeast Oklahoma City community. And so if you'd be interested in volunteering, let me know. We're practicing social distancing and all the sanitizing requirements with our partners over at the Oklahoma City County Health Department, advising to make sure we're being safe with that. So I'd love to get you plugged in, love to talk to you more about that. And this project has really been a joyous thing for us to be able to do. Kat Gant has a wealth of knowledge regarding anything and everything green, and it's been quite great because I know nothing about, well, now I know a little bit more, but I'm not the most advanced when it comes to gardening and things of this nature. And so this has just been a cool partnership for us to come together and kind of put something out to the community, easily accessible and really good things to know regarding developing gardens. So Kat, thank you once again. I know this is our fifth and final session in this segment of videos we put together, and it has been fantastic, and we're just thankful that you've taken it on and allowed us to partner with you on it.
Well, I'd like to welcome, thank you, Anthony, and I'd like to welcome everybody who's here and thank them for coming. I'm just going to jump in. I want to show you all real quick our website. Here at the OKC Beautiful website, if you go to the programs tab and scroll down to 2020 gardening resources, it'll come to this page with a number of different posts. This one right here, webinar class series in partnership with Lynn Institute, has all of the classes in this series linked. So you can watch the videos, you can look at the class outlines and the class slides from every class that we did. So it was Gardening 101, a Summer Veggies Crops class, Composting 101, Natural Control of Oklahoma Garden Pests, and tonight, which is Fall Gardening. So also for tonight, I have a few documents in addition to the one the outline that I showed you. There's this one, which I mentioned, which is a bunch of dates and like lots of details about what to grow when in our area. And then there's a couple of others that I'll reference here. So I'll just pull this back up out of the way. Okay, so I'm gonna kick this class off by talking about this time of year being kind of a transition. It kind of seems like we're at the height of summer, but we're actually crossing over right now into fall gardening season. I guess it's a little bit counterintuitive because it seems like the weather's just getting hotter and hotter right now. But we're actually, in terms of being ahead of the game, this is when we start thinking and preparing and planting for the fall and even for the winter. So if anybody here has had a fall garden before, go ahead and type it into the chat box and say, hey, I've done this before. Or if you're particularly interested in growing anything specific in the fall, or you have a specific fall gardening questions, you can type that in. We'll try to get to it. This picture here is to show you what you can achieve like in about a month and a half from now. You can have a mix of cool season and warm season crops going. So off to the left here, you'll see with a little bit of shade, some burlap draped over some hoops, there's a broccoli crop coming on next to a green bean. This is a full-on, heat-loving summer row. We have a row of peas, purple whole peas, which are a summer bean that you can grow. Edamame, but then we have bunching onions, which is a fall crop. And some cucumbers over here. So there's some fall stuff sprinkled in. But what's also interesting about this picture is that these crops that are summer crops are actually not finished. You'd think by September things would be, if you planted them in April or May, they'd be kind of mature and kind of crispy by then. But these crops were actually planted in probably the beginning of August. And that's why the garden looks like a fresh spring garden, even though it's mid-September. So we're going to talk about how to get there. Talk about taking the steps that you need to take to get to a fall garden. And then the key knowledge you have to have about what's a cool versus a warm season crop. And then how do you time it all? And like different tips for planting different crops. So just a warning, there are some really text-heavy slides in the plant section of this class, which we will go through really fast and you won't be able to read it all, but just know you can reference back to the slides as a resource if you go to plant a specific crop and you want all those details. And then we're going to talk about the greatest part, in my opinion, which is once you have a fall garden going, how do you just take a few steps to simply keep it going on into the winter so that you can harvest stuff in January. The whys of fall gardening are really surprising. I'm not from Oklahoma originally, and when I got here, my first summer was just so oppressively hot that I just wilted like a little spring leaf, and I couldn't handle it. So, but then like the beginning of September happened and I was like, whoa, this is awesome. And, simultaneously I'm noticing that things in the garden are growing a lot better. So the thing about our growing season in Oklahoma is it is just super long. We have a super hot summer, but it lasts forever. And on the edges of it, it's really good for growing food. And the fall is especially when you have warm, even hot days coupled with cool nights, that is a great recipe for good pollination and good fruit setting. So if you're growing, like, say, bell peppers right now in your garden and they just are barely producing anything, or the peppers are super small or stunted looking, just hang on, because when September comes and the plants can function better because they're not in this extreme heat cycle, they will actually be pollinated better, and the fruit will be bigger and it'll take off growing. So you'll just see that better production happens in the fall. Pest pressure tends to be less. I guess the pests go through their numerous cycles starting in April when it stops freezing. And then by the end of the summer, it's just a little bit more spread out and a little bit less intense. Now, saying that, I will be made to be a liar instantly, because, we'll have a bad season on like something particular. And you guys would be like, that lady did not know what she was talking about. So just a little disclaimer there. But I would say, generally speaking, as a broad generalization, pest pressure can be less in the fall. Weather's more stable. We don't have severe weather typically in the fall. We don't have to worry about running buckets out over our tomato plants and trying to avoid hailstorms. Again, knock on wood, because Oklahoma is what it is. And it's 2020, so you never know what to expect. But better stability. Definitely easier to be outside in your garden towards the end of the summer and the fall. And then, of course, the bonus of being able to go through the winter. So this picture shows a couple of, actually 3 beds that are, this was a picture taken in one of our school gardens in probably February, I believe. And the picture on the right shows what's hiding underneath the plastic. The plastic is providing a perfect environment for winter greens. That's spinach in the front, some carrots mixed in, some kale back in there. These were crops that were planted in the fall, and we harvested on them all winter long. We had kids eating a greens stir fry in the classroom in February. So just a little teaser for what we're going to learn about tonight. So your main steps, you have to be cognizant of our first frost date. Here in Oklahoma, in central Oklahoma specifically, about November 1st through 7th is when I would say 90% of our first freezes come. And it does vary year to year, so it's always a gamble. Keep that in mind. But generally speaking, our first frost comes about November 1st. So as of today, we have close to 90 days to work with before we have freezing weather. So that's a really nice long chunk to grow warm season crops.
Did you get your coin off
again?
Did you get your dollar?
I just saw somebody had a question about acorn squash. Now we'll talk about winter squash here in a minute. Okay, so I think that was just a little unmuted blip there. So, okay, so we have about 90 days. So you have a couple of options right now with your garden. You can plant crops that are going to love this warm weather, need warm weather, and do their whole entire life cycle and finish maturing before November 1st. So those would be crops that have a days to maturity of 90 days or less. Or you can start preparing and planting crops that will actually like the cold. Now it seems like, how could I plant broccoli when it's so hot outside? Well, you get the timing right, and you can plant it while it's still warm, moving into the cold, and that's what we'll talk about. So here's a little snapshot of our climate. This is one of the graphs that we use a lot in school to help kids understand our growing season. This document is linked on our website on that page that I showed you. So where you see this nice hump here, thankfully this isn't a hump about a virus, it's just temperature. You can see where we are warm, May through, end of September, and you see our cool season. Well, what is important about this is that we have a cool season that lasts from, you know, almost as many months as we have the warm season. And we can work with that here. So the warm season crops that are here in the middle are going to be these down on the left, and then the cool season crops are going to be the ones on the right. Now, if you've been around gardeners or gardening, you've heard people talk about hardy plants and tender plants. And this handout, which you can look at on the website, kind of breaks it down, which crops are hardy and which crops are tender. And you don't really have to know these terms, but it's nice to be cognizant of them or to sort of have an awareness. You know, on the spectrum of hardiness, broccoli, cabbage, collards, Brussels sprouts, carrots, kale, onions, radish, salad mix, spinach, turnips, and garlic are the absolute most hardy. They don't really need a lot of protection in our Oklahoma winter. They can even just survive with a little row cover thrown on during the coldest part of the summer, coldest part of the winter. Semi-hardy crops need a little bit more protection. Those are the ones that are going to do well with that plastic over them. The tender crops are not going to like being grown during the winter at all, but they can do well on the edges of the season with protection. So you can go past that frost date with some row fabric on these tender crops, some of these tender crops. You've heard about our hardiness zone map, the USDA hardiness zone map. I just want to make a distinction. This map, the hardiness zones that you hear about, have to do with how low our temperatures go, not necessarily when our frost is or when, you know, what vegetables we can grow in this context, because really this is more about plants that are going to grow all year in our climate, how low they can go in terms of temperature. So we live in 7A, which means our average low is between, extreme low is between 0 and 5 degrees. So you don't ever really want to plant anything that can't go lower than that. That's what the hardiness zone map helps out with. Okay, so back to our fall gardens. You've got 90 days of warm weather ahead, or I should say not freezing weather. So you have options. You can plant these late summer warm season crops, or you can plant these cool season crops here. So I recommend getting familiar with what likes cool weather and what likes warm weather. You know, I've been doing this enough that I kind of forget that it's sometimes not intuitive. You know, people think that they could plant, say, broccoli in the spring in Oklahoma and don't realize that that broccoli is going to go downhill really fast as it heats up. You know, a lot of the traditional gardening knowledge comes from people in like Maine, where they can grow broccoli all summer long and it's totally happy, but not here. You can't do that. You need to pay attention to warm versus cool. So here are the crops that love warm weather. So where this document comes in handy, this is the one I told you about. This is approximate planting dates for Central Oklahoma. The first page of this, which you see on your screen, is spring crops that are for the warm season. So these are crops that love the warm weather. You just can't plant them before it finishes freezing. So this column right here in the middle shows you when outdoors. Okay, so kind of look, you've got your options for spring planting there. So, but down at the bottom here, you've got fall warm season crops. So this is what I'm talking about right now. Late July through August, you can plant these crops that are listed here on the left. Green beans, cucumbers, black-eyed peas, summer squash, winter squash. You just have to pay attention to this concept here, days to maturity. Days to maturity means literally how many days it's going to take for a crop to reach harvestable size, having fruit coming off of it. So you can see green beans take 45 to 65, just a little bit over a month, really, to be ready. And then like winter squash, probably the shortest days to maturity of any winter squash would be about 90 days. So for example, Barclay's question about acorn squash, you're going to want to get your acorn squash plants in like today or tomorrow or this weekend or in the next week at the latest, so that you have a really good chance of getting them to harvestable size by November 1st. This document then goes on and it has fall and winter cool season crops. So as we get closer to actual fall weather, you're going to want to transition to thinking about the cool season crops that you want to grow, that you can transition to keeping through the winter. And you don't have to keep it through the winter. You can just go up to the winter and let it go, but you have the option to keep going. This little chart, and I showed this in our Gardening 101 class, I believe. This has a nice kind of visual timeline for what's happening right now. So the shaded sort of polka dotted green right now is what we'd be considering our planting stages for these different crops. The green is when they grow, and then the harvesting stage is the orange color. So for example, carrots are going to be planted anytime mid-August through mid-September. They're going to grow, and then you've got harvesting of carrots November, December, January, and all the way in through February. So hopefully this gives you a nice idea about how long we can actually go. With a little effort right now, we can grow these cool season crops, for months. And the nice thing about like root crops, for example, out in the garden during the winter, it's kind of like they're just sitting out there in the fridge. You can go out and you can dig your carrots out carefully during the winter and just pull them out as you need them, and they stay really good. The other thing is carrots taste a lot better when they've been grown in cold soil versus hot soil. Okay, so this next section of the class, I'm going to start by, if you look at your outline, I'm going to go through time-wise, like starting with August. What do you want to get in the ground by the middle of this month? And then we're going to go to the end of this month, and then we're going to go to early September, mid-September, late September. And I'm obviously not going to be able to touch on all of the crops, but we will be able to hit on a few of them. One unexpected one that people don't think about is soybeans, aka edamame, depending on how fancy you are. That's a great crop here in Oklahoma. It loves the heat. And it has a fairly quick turnaround time. So you can put a crop of edamame in right now and have a nice harvest before the weather freezes. So I'm not going to read through all of the growing details, but if anybody has specific questions, hold on to them and or ask them. And then just like I said, remember, you can come back and reference these slides for specific growing information, like you put 8 seeds per foot and you make your rows 15 to 30 inches apart. Here's a picture of an edamame or soybean plant growing in a garden. You can see a little bit of pest damage there, but all in all, a really nice, healthy looking crop of edamame planted early August and harvested by mid-October. Okay, so by the end of August, you want to have parsnips, cilantro, green beans, and peas planted. I don't know who likes parsnips. Does anybody like parsnips? Actually, oh, Sarah's raising her hand. Okay. I actually like parsnips if they're cooked right. So you can make a really yummy oven-baked parsnip dish. And the parsnips are, if you're going to take the time to come to a class like this and be prepared, then you're going to have a leg up, because it's really easy to miss the window for planting parsnips, because you don't think about them until it's too late usually, because they take a long time to grow. They also take a long time to germinate. Parsnips are in the carrot family, and like carrots, anything in that family, carrots, fennel, dill, the seeds take a long time to germinate. And then parsnips particularly take a long time to actually form and grow. But if you stick with it, you get a nice reward. There's some parsnips that were planted middle of August, harvested January 21st. So again, root crops that grow in the cold weather, the starch in the roots actually converts to sugar as a response to cold temperatures. The opposite happens in hot weather. So if you have a spring crop of, say, carrots or parsnips, they're going to get woody and bitter. I'm sure everybody who's tried to grow carrots in Oklahoma spring and summer has experienced a bitter carrot. You will find the opposite if you grow them in the fall. One of the challenges for us starting our fall crops in August is obviously our heat. You know, it can be a tricky thing to deal with the high temperatures both in the soil and the air. So a couple of little hacks you can do to cool your soil down. If you see this, this soil is covered in straw mulch. You know, make your nice damp soil for sowing the seeds, and then cover the area in mulch to kind of buffer the temperature, and then rig up some shade. And I'm going to show you a few different options for shade that you can do. This is PVC that's cut and bent into hoops. You can either plunge the ends of the PVC into the dirt, or you can put some rebar stakes in and then put the PVC right over the rebar. And then you can get these long runners of burlap at the fabric store. There's other materials that you can use as well. I'll show you a couple of those coming up. You want to get cilantro in before the end of the month. That is an 8-week crop, you know, really quick turnaround, and cilantro likes cooler weather. So as the days get cooler, it gets happier. Green beans, you want to plant your green beans by the end of August. You can get a nice crop in. I'm trying to see if there's anything in particular I want to tell you about here. They're just green beans are just pretty easy to grow, just takes time to pick. Here's some August 25th planted that were ready by mid-October. Peas. Sugar snap peas in particular are one of my favorites. I see a question here, where do you typically get your seeds? That's a good question. I go to TLC a lot and stand in front of their seed display and you know, kind of get lost. There's just a lot of options there. It's nice to look at seeds in person. The big box stores have a lot of choices now. They even have organic seeds that you can choose from. It's fun to order online as well. I recommend a few different websites. Johnny's Select Seeds is one. Territorial Seeds out of Oregon. High Mowing Seeds out of Maine. These are all really good options, and their websites are just full of information about the varieties, and you can get varieties that you won't find in the stores that way. There's a few more I'm thinking of. There's Southern Exposure, which is they are going to have varieties that are more suited to our climate with our heat. There's Seed Saver Exchange, that's another one. Maybe I need to make a list for you guys. Anyway, those are some options. So back to peas. Peas really do great in our fall weather, and they're such a fun crop to have in your garden because you can just snack on them while you're out there. I'm particularly fond of sugar snap peas because you can eat them and they're just crunchy and easy to eat raw. They do really go down with that first frost, so you have to be careful on your timing to make sure you get them in early enough so that they can be sort of hitting their stride well before that November 1st deadline. And there's some good varieties here that I recommend: Sugar Ann and Sugar Snap. You do need a little bit of a trellis of some kind for peas. That's something to think about. Here's another shot of some fall planted peas, August 20th. This picture was taken late November, well, mid-November. It looks like it probably has withstood already one frost or two. I can just tell by the color of the leaves. They'll withstand a frost, they just kind of slow their production down. By early September, oh yeah, somebody said Baker Creek. That's a great one. It's a really fun website to peruse. They have a lot of really interesting varieties to choose from. Beautiful catalog too. Okay, so early September, you want to get your summer squash in. Now, just let me back up and say, when you see it says by early September, that doesn't mean you wait until that time. It's any time now until then. So you don't have to wait until the last minute to plant these. You can start planting summer squash now. You can plant beets and carrots now. What I would do is plant them in successions if I had enough space, so that you have several flushes of them coming on. So summer squash, beets, and carrots, incidentally, ones that you can spiralize. They just happen to be on the same picture here. Those are ones you want to get in by early September for them to be successful going into the cold. And the reason for that is that while these plants like the cool weather, it's really nice for them to get the majority of their growth on before the days get too short. So when we're heading into the fall, we're getting the nicer temperatures, but we're also battling the loss of daylight. So the shorter days mean less growth happening. So you have to have early enough so that they can get big enough to then be the right size to just churn out the production going into the cold. I meant to go back to that question about acorn squash, but I'll get to that in a second because we are going to talk, well, let me go ahead and talk about it now. Acorn squash, I think I meant to talk about this. I meant to talk about this when we were back on that slide that showed the cool versus the warm season. So like if you look on your warm season fall list here, winter squash is listed on there and it'll say 90 days. It says 90 days to maturity. You have to go find a variety of acorn squash that is 90 days or less, or you will be sad when the freeze comes before your fruit is completely ready to be harvested. You want to harvest a winter squash before the cold, even though they're called winter squash. You don't want them to be out there in the garden getting frozen. You want them to be have gone through their life cycle, which means that they've matured and the fruit has cured in the field. That means that the skin kind of hardens and it gets a little bit tough. Then you can pull it out of the garden. You don't want your fingernail to be able to pierce the skin. So it needs to be in the garden for that full 90 days. Even if it's nice and big, but it's real soft and tender, it's not quite ready to be harvested. So I can't remember off the top of my head if acorn squash is a 90-day crop or not. What I do know is spaghetti squash is an 88-day crop, and I'm getting ready to plant spaghetti squash in my garden this weekend. Of course, if our first freeze doesn't come till the middle of November, end of November, you can be in luck for a lot of these things. But anyway, I wanted to get back to that because I didn't want to forget. So we were talking about summer squash, beets, and carrots. I want to make a plug here for root vegetables in general. I've already mentioned that they get sweeter with the cold weather. The ones that you see here, the carrots, beets, parsnips, turnips, rutabagas, and radish, these are all really great crops to grow in the fall because of that reason, because of their ability to taste sweeter and just have better texture. Here's beets, beet greens, and parsnips harvested in late January. They're all going to be good quality. Okay, so back on our timeline, we want to have planted by early September your summer squash. Summer squash is like a 50 to 60 day crop. So you can even probably plant summer squash now, and then into, let's see, in about 50 days, you could plant, or say 30 days, you could plant another succession and have 2 flushes of summer squash coming on. And this slide has some details about how to kind of grow that, but just so you know, summer squash, the reason it can do so well in the fall is it's such a fast grower. So this is a 2-week-old squash plant grown from seed. You put your seeds in the ground now, in 2 weeks you'll have something like this, with some fruit coming on not too long after. Okay, so back to the root crops. I think that root slide might have been a little out of order, but early September is really your deadline to get your root crops in. So beets and carrots are going to be in the same wavelength there. This right here, this guy is my beetnik. Whoops, there he is. So you can be a beetnik and grow beets, and I think that's really cute. I'm looking to see if anybody's laughing. Smile, wave. Okay, thanks. All right. Just remember, when you plant your beets and carrots, you're starting those from seed, you have to thin them out, which means you're going to sow 15 seeds per foot, but then you're going to come back when they're little baby plants and you're going to thin them to like 2 or 3 fingers apart. That way they can size up and be nice and big like the ones you see in the picture here. I recommend like trying different varieties of beets. Don't just stick with the red beets. You know, golden beets are delicious. They tend to be sweet. Kids really like them. White beets are fun. Just don't be afraid to dive into the world of beets. They're really nutritious, really good for your blood. They're a blood cleanser, and they can be made in lots of different ways and be made to be very yummy. So beets and carrots, same deadline, early September. Thinning again is the key. These varieties down here are really worth checking out. If you can't find them locally, ordering them online. These are ones that are good for overwintering rather than growing in the spring. A lot of carrots varieties are meant to be heat tolerant. Well, we don't need that. We need ones that like the cold. So those varieties are known to be really great winter growing carrots. There's some August 30th carrots that were harvested in December and January. Here's more of the shade options that I was talking about. This is kind of the burlap shade 2.0. The last one I showed you was 3.0, and this is like the 4.0 model with actual shade cloth instead of burlap. Shade cloth is something you can get at a nursery store. You can order it online. It has different percentages of shade that you can use. It's just a little bit more high tech and does a little bit of a better job. But it's not necessary. You can still accomplish a lot with the burlap. There's there's the 3.0. Another little trick for germinating root crops, especially carrots and parsnips and things in that family that take a long time to actually germinate. Take that runner of burlap and lay it down across. This is burlap right here that's been pulled back. You can wet your soil, lay the burlap on, wet the burlap, keep the burlap moist until the seeds come up. So you can leave that burlap on when you water for 2 or 3 weeks, and that will prevent the soil from drying out excessively between waterings. You have to keep your seeds moist to germinate. So that's why carrots are such a challenge, especially if you're growing them in August, because the soil is going to want to dry out constantly. So that little wet layer of burlap on top is going to really help you get your carrots and your the seeds that take a long time to germinate. There's that variety Napoli. That's a really good winter carrot that you can order from Johnny's. I know they have it. Again, planted in the fall and harvested in December. So your Christmas dinner or whatever could be, fresh carrots. one thing you'll notice with the crops that you winter over, that you start in the fall and winter over, say the packet says 58 days, the packet for Napoli carrot says 58 days. Well, that 58 days is probably more geared towards spring growing. If you grow it in the winter, it's going to be quite a bit longer days to maturity, and that's okay. It wouldn't be okay if it was like a warm loving crop, but these cold crops that like the cold, they'll just hold and they just grow more slowly when the days are shorter. So just keep that in mind with your crops that are cool season crops that overwinter, that they will take a little bit longer to completely mature. So that's why if you want to grow carrots for your, say, your Thanksgiving dinner, you want to get those in now so that you have 75 days before you harvest. So here's your carrot commandments. Definitely get them in before mid-September. And then the technique that I've found works really well is to seed them in a shallow trench. And that's a lot of seed. And it's not just a thin line, it's more of a band that you're going for. Water as often as you can, and then do a really good job thinning, and you will be rewarded. I wanted to show this book. This guy, his name is Elliot Coleman. He is an organic farmer in Maine, and he grows year-round in Maine. So if he can do it, we can do it, right? And he does it without a lot of technology. He's using passive, he's using passive tunnels and hoops and covers, and just sort of, planning ahead. So his book is great because it really gives you an idea of what's possible. Now he is growing on a farm scale, but everything he talks about is scalable to a backyard garden. I've found to be true. Okay, so we talked about getting your early September crops in. Now mid-September, by mid-September, you want to get your greens and your cauliflower in. Greens love the cold weather, and they are so delicious grown in the cool weather. You can sow seeds in August, or you can plant seedlings that you can buy even into mid-September. So when I say get your greens in by mid-September, I'm talking about transitioning over to seedlings. And that brings me to another little thing I wanted to point out about this chart. The second column says best planted as ... And it says either seeds or plants or either. Some things love to be sown from seed only. And if you try to plant them as a transplant, they will be sad. And then there's other crops that are the other way around. They just do better if you can start them in the ground as a plant, as a little seedling. And then some, you can do it either way. As far as timing goes in the fall, if you're trying to kind of cheat a little bit and get ahead, plant your crops as plants or little seedlings, and then you will have saved yourself a little bit of time. So that's the case for the greens. And I'm happy to say that I know TLC, sometimes Home Depot and Lowe's have good choices too, but I know TLC has great kale and chard and other greens that you can buy in the fall time frame. Going into early September, you can go there and you can buy kale, say, in a plug and plant it in your garden. So
What?
There's some chard. Picture of some
I'm
chard
watching
plants.
fall gardening on my phone.
Okay, so Swiss chard planted from seed August 25th, harvested in October. So I'm hoping that these pictures are giving you some motivation to say, oh my gosh, I can really have these beautiful greens in October if I just plant them now. And that's what we're going for. Does anybody have any questions so far? Okay, just type your question in if you think of anything. So here's some chard that was planted September 21st from seed. And I think I said to plant it as a plant if you're going that late, but here I am planting it from seed and it still worked. Every year is different. Here's some red Russian kale that was planted in this early September timeframe, and this picture I think was taken in October. Okay, so moving on down the line, by mid-September, you want to get your cauliflower in. Usually you plant broccoli and cauliflower as seedlings to give them a little jump. Also, part of the timing of these is that some of these crops really are heat sensitive. So like if I went out and planted broccoli and cauliflower starts now, they would not be very happy because of the extreme heat. So while I said anytime between now and this deadline, there are certain crops you want to pay attention to these notes, and the brassicas, meaning the broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage family, they really prefer not to be subjected to the heat. You know, they would be happier if you wait a little bit closer to end of August, early September, mid-September. A little tip on cauliflower: once it's producing its head, if you'll take the leaves and close them up around the head and secure them with a clothespin, you will get a pretty white head rather than some a more yellowy color that's been exposed to the sun. There's a cauliflower planted as a seedling mid-August and harvested early November. So you can have your broccoli and cauliflower on your Thanksgiving table if you get it planted in August. A lot of people don't realize that broccoli and cauliflower leaves are completely edible and delicious. You can cook them like you would cook collard greens, and they have very different flavors, sweet and mild, somewhat nutty, I would say. And just another note that things take a little bit longer as you go into the cool weather. This cauliflower that you see on the right took about 90 days as opposed to the 50 days that you see on the sign planted in the fall. So just be aware that's kind of built into this timing scheme. So by the end of September, you want to get your turnips in. Turnips love the cold weather. They can grow all winter without any cover. These are planted mid-September, harvested in October. By the end of September, you want to get head lettuce, spinach, and broccoli in the ground. Here's some head lettuce. Head lettuce is less sensitive to the cold than salad mix. Here's 1 month later, that same romaine lettuce, ready to harvest in October. So this is one of those text-heavy slides that you will not be able to digest it all right now. But I just wanted to point out that head lettuce there are certain types that can withstand the frost that will come, and that's the romaine, the butterhead, and the summer crisp. And if you're ordering your seeds online, you can punch those categories in and get lots of options. Spinach. Spinach is a superfood, and it is a super plant for fall and overwintering in Oklahoma. Doesn't really even require much protection here. Very frost tolerant. If you do provide it a little protection, it gets huge. I think you saw the picture of the spinach in our school garden. Here's a spinach row planted from seed August 30th, harvesting beginning in mid-October. By the end of September, I mentioned broccoli. Again, same as cauliflower, it'll get stressed if you put it in the ground too soon. A little shade is good. I have a fun little broccoli time lapse here, so get ready. Here we go. Broccoli planted August 15th. 2 weeks later, got a little bit of shade on it. 3 weeks in, 4 to 5 weeks in, the little broccoli is forming. 6 weeks later, nice heads coming on. 8 weeks in, you've got your beautiful head ready to harvest. And incidentally, if you haven't grown broccoli before, this is what it looks like when it's past the point when you want to harvest it. See how it's getting a little bit loose, nice and tight, like what you see in the grocery store. If you leave it in another week, it starts to get really loose and kind of the little buds are forming inside each of those little nubbins, and they're getting ready to do this. So this is the gift you get if you let your broccoli go to flower in your garden. You get this beautiful yellow explosion. And it is actually still edible. The flowers are edible. They're a little peppery and spicy. You can put them in a salad. So don't fret if you do let your broccoli go past, and the pollinators will like it. So just a little side note about broccoli. So in case everybody didn't realize, the brassica family is the broccoli family: cabbage, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, broccoli, kohlrabi. They're all kind of in the same time frame, getting ready to go in the ground here in September, by mid-September. So you have a little bit more leeway with salad mix. I mean, I think I misspoke earlier when I said head lettuce. Head lettuce is more susceptible to the cold, with the exception of the types that I mentioned. Salad mix can handle the cold more easily because it's not as big. It's easier for it to be protected with a tunnel. So here's how I like to do salad mix. You grow your varieties separately, and then you harvest them and kind of mix and match into your bowl. Salad mix is a cut and come again crop where you just snip it and then it grows back. And then you can put your hoop and your plastic over it. And I'm going to kind of speed up here so I can tell you a little bit more about the tunnels, the low tunnels. Garlic, incidentally, very easy to grow in Oklahoma. It goes in the ground in October around Indigenous Peoples Day, October 15th through early November, mid-November. That's how you plant it. You put it in the ground about 6 inches apart, and then it grows all winter, and you harvest it in June. You hang it to dry for 3 to 4 weeks. We do this in our school gardens. There's different types of garlic to explore. You were interested in growing your own onions. Start yours indoors in January in the window in a salad container. Plant them out in March. Have them in June, July. Okay, so I want to give you a little quick rundown before we run out of time on how to protect your more tender crops and how to keep things going through the winter. So this little technique here is called low tunnels with a caterpillar style cinching technique to keep the plastic from blowing away. In your outline, I put a video from Oklahoma Gardening, and there's 2 videos. There's one video of them putting their tunnels in, and one video talking about how you need to vent them to keep things from getting too hot in there. Their technique is different than this, and I think you'll see when you watch the video, it looks a little bit susceptible to the wind. This is a really stout technique, and it comes from the Elliott Coleman book. The caterpillar styles where you crisscross the ropes and it creates tension. So all you have to do is just lift the plastic up and the ropes create enough tension that the plastic just stays there. You can vent it that way. But you can see you can have your beautiful greens or your whatever growing under there in the snow. Another option is if you have a raised bed, to build like some kind of frame over the top. So that's something that you could explore. I like to put the low tunnels on in October before the weather is getting horrendous. Excuse me, and then just pay attention to venting because if you get a 60-degree day and you have that layer of plastic over, you will be 85, 90 easily under there. So you do have to pay attention to venting. there's some more of the traditional cold frames. You can order parts like this online. You can order kits. You can create your own out of old windows. Um, they're easy to make and they're fun to have in your backyard. This book right here, The Year-Round Gardener, is a great one by Nikki Jabor. And she has detailed plans in here, which I'm sure you could actually get free if you just, similar plans if you look for them on the interweb. So the details on the tunnels I meant to include. So the caterpillar style, I'm gonna move down. This is a picture from one of our school gardens. You can see this piece of plastic was a little big for the bed, but we made do. We did not use the caterpillar style this past year. We just used heavy bricks at the base, which is not nearly as efficient, but it did the job. So if you have the opportunity to invest in the time at the beginning to put the caterpillar system in place, but this is what was growing under our plastic without, just with the bricks and the plastic and the hoops. You can use metal or you can use PVC. If you use metal, you buy electrical conduit and then you purchase a bender or you borrow a bender from somebody that you can use to create these nice hoops. I'm going to stop and answer some questions here real quick. So squash bugs. Squash bugs tend to be a little bit better if you're growing in September than they are in, the earlier part of the summer. But you still do need to be really vigilant about going and picking off the eggs when they're young, checking your leaves every day for eggs, and then using the protocol we talked about in the pest class last week, with using soap or neem or even something a little bit harder hitting on the older adults, the nymphs or the adults. So the other question is, I have found that waiting to plant my summer crops later in the planting season, I tend to miss the pests that can devastate the vegetables. Have you seen this? And if so, could you recommend this for fall vegetables? Yes, that's one of the benefits of fall gardening, like we said, is that we tend to find the cycles have slowed down a little bit. They're more spread out. There's less intense pressure by waiting until the fall to grow. And we find that especially once you get into September, you're dealing mostly with aphids or you might have caterpillars on your brassicas. So you have to be ready with BT liquid or BT powder or a bottle of soapy water to get the aphids. But yeah, Lily's question, I found that to be true, and I think that is the case for the timing of fall gardens. So there's a shout out to Elliot Coleman. I wanted to mention, I wanted to get back to the hardware for the low tunnel. So the trick with the caterpillar style is you get these little washers and you get this wire and you attach it to the rebar so that you have something to thread your rope through. And then you just crisscross the rope, and then you have to have a special knot so that you can tighten and lower. And that knot is beyond me right now. I couldn't tell you how to do that knot. I'd have to really go back and research. And I can't even remember the name of the knot. You can figure that part out, and it's really fun because once you get that knot in place, you can tighten and you can loosen. So if you know anybody who's a sailor, ask them for help. Again, you need to vent during the winter. We can get days where it's 60 degrees and that will really heat up inside your tunnels and your cold frames. Mentioned the pests, Safer Soap and BT are going to be your pals. All right, I've gone 2 minutes over, but I will stay if anybody has any more questions or wants to make a comment or anything about. I would like to hear if anybody feels somewhat encouraged by what they saw tonight to try this.
I would say definitely, we definitely are encouraged by this and feel like we have a better understanding of what to plant when. For example, we planted broccoli in the spring and it shot up and was like 3 foot tall. And we're like, this doesn't look right.
It's not right.
That's right. That's exactly it. And it's backwards here. We can't do that. We can't do those cool season crops in the spring here because our spring is just, you blink and it's over.
Yeah.
Thanks,
I'm
Kat.
glad to hear that. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's nice
thank you.
to see you guys. Anybody else? So please check out, oh, it looks like there might be something else on there. Okay, I'm glad people are going to be starting. So I've got some folks saying they're going to try some beets, carrots, and kohlrabi. Yes, go for it, you guys. Go for the fall gardens. And reach out to me if you have any questions. Use those links on our website to learn more about what you need to plant when, and then always email me if you have questions. Our website is okcbeautiful.com, and I'll pull it down here again so you guys can see. You want to go to the programs tab and click on 2020 gardening resources. All of the class information is on this link right here. And then you can check out these other posts here that have, for example, this one right here, I wrote in the spring, but it has a lot of the information about seasonality that we just discussed. And there's some spacing information. So there you go. All right, well, thank you all so much for joining us, both for this class and for the entire series. And yeah, if you have any other feedback about this or the other classes for us to improve this series in the future, please don't hesitate to let us know. And then let us know what happens with your fall gardens. We'd love to hear. You can post a picture or send us a picture and we'll post it on our Facebook page. All right, thanks everybody. Anthony, if you don't have anything else, we can let everybody go.
No, thank you so much, Kat. Like I said, I always, it's funny, anything green that I've ever put in my house has perished not too long after it's been in my house. So this is good. I'm excited. We're going to use some of this stuff. We've got a new garden I was very briefly told you about not too long ago. So we're excited to see what we can do with it. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
You guys take care.
All right, bye everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
You're welcome.